Right, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. Apologies for being a little bit late on air. Of course, just as I was about to press the go button, somebody turned up and knocked on the door, and I had to be polite and talk to them for a couple of minutes, so I am around about 10 minutes late. Sorry about that. So to all of you people who are saying, is it on? Yes, it is on. I am here. So, where are we today then? Well, it's show number 409. It's Sunday the 18th of February, and the stories I've got for you today include a fake 50-mile-per-hour speed limit sign, which has led to a bunch of drivers and possibly some motorcyclists too getting speeding tickets on the A20 out of London towards Kent. An RAC survey has showed that most drivers are ignoring the new Highway Code pedestrian rules. And I'll have a look at that in a moment. Fixed penalty notices, though, have surged, they say. Food delivery riders went on strike on Valentines Day in Brighton. Meanwhile, a crackdown on drunk driving has been so successful that Ho Chi Minh City Police have actually run out of pound space for all the seized motorcycles. And a Carrasco, the 2018 World Super Sport 300 champion, has signed up for the new FIM Women's Circuit Racing World Championship. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Beeline, if you are aware of the sort of minimalist navigation aid, there is a new version which gets a mini map view. And we'll have a quick look at the MotoWatt e-bike, and we'll ask if it's overcomplicated and overpriced, which I think it is. And finally, in the in-depth item today, another wacky fuel is being proposed for cars and bikes. This time it's ammonia, and we'll look at this one and explain exactly why that's not going to work. Right, now I've got a few things here just to point out. I'm just going to give a quick shout out for everybody who's contributed to my coffee page over the last 2 weeks, and it's quite a long list actually today. So Brian, Christine, Claire, Charles Kittle, Living Martial Arts, Johan, Mad Cockney, Sandy, Howard, Nick, Naffa, Hallam, Mark C, who bought the Science of Being Seen ebook, and Anonymous. So thanks to all of you for your support, very much appreciated. If you've got the newsletter today on my Substack page, survivalskills.substack.com, you've got 2 weeks worth of links to the articles that have been up over the between the last Sunday show and this one. If you're not a Substack subscriber, do pop over there. You get all the links in one handy email, so basically you don't have to keep going back to Facebook to see what I've been writing about. Anyway, the next thing I just do want to tell you about is that there is a live online talk event going out tomorrow, so I've got to get on with finishing writing it. The topic is about improving your riding this time. So this is using the self-assessment chart which I gave away for free. If you want to find out more about how to use the chart and to get yourself a download copy, you can use the link which I'm just about to pop up for you. It'll go up in the comment stream, so there it is. As I say, the chart itself is completely free, but what the talk will show you is how to use it. So do pop over there and get a look at that if you can, and I think you'll find the chart useful. And if you come along to the talk on Monday, then I think you'll find that even more useful. So I've got the link to the show somewhere, but I seem to have lost it temporarily. I'll pop that up anyway at the end of the show. Right, so, okay, moving rapidly on then. What do we have for you in the news? The first story is, let me just scroll down to the right bit. Oh yes, it's the weather, isn't it? That's my usual item to follow. Well, the rain's stopped here in London. It has clouded over again. It was looking quite bright an hour ago, but it's clouded over again. But the rain is moving rapidly to the east. But if you are out on the bike later, do take care, because it was a very wet night indeed, and there will be flooded surfaces potentially flooded rivers as well, and so watch out for mud and surface water if you're out on the bike. Now there will be some scattered showers moving in on the western coast, but it will be mostly dry elsewhere, and it does remain very mild for the time of year. Temperatures anywhere from 10 in the north to 14 in the south. Now Monday is likely to be a day of sunshine and showers. Tuesday sees some rain spreading across the north of the UK. Central and southern parts should remain dry and cloudy on Tuesday. Wednesday looks wet and windy, however, across most of the country, but temperatures do remain on the mild side. There's been another raft of sort of snow walls of snow stories. Yeah, there's some colder air likely to return towards the end of the month, and it could bring some snow to the north and on higher ground, but it's far from the catastrophe that's being predicted. All right, okay, so on with the news for motorcyclists. Now, back in October, a section of the A20 heading east towards Kent near Sidcup had its speed limit reduced from 70 to 40. I have to admit, I didn't actually notice that when I drove down there. Maybe I went down a different route, I can't remember. Anyway, Transport for London, TfL, they have said the measure is for safety reasons because of persistent flooding. Well, given the rain recently, I'm not really surprised it's flooding. But drivers have apparently been caught out on that stretch, firstly because the signs have not been entirely clear, some drivers say, but also, rather more alarmingly, because somebody put a fake 50-mile-per-hour speed limit sign up by what police and TfL describe as an unauthorised party. Now, the stretch also appears to have average speed cameras recently installed, and hundreds of drivers have apparently reacted to the fake speed limit sign by speeding up, and they say they've received speeding tickets as a result. The Met Police, though, have said that the penalties will not be waived, as the force claims that it would not have impacted the enforcement of the 40-mile-per-hour average speed limit. Now, Dominic Smith, he's a solicitor with Patterson Law. He specialises in driver defence. He says about 600 people have actually come forward complaining about this issue. And he said those that use the road every day could well have committed multiple driving offences, and he says that the penalties should be waived. Now, one driver who has 3 points on his licence already has subsequently received 3 further penalty notices due to exceeding the speed limit on this stretch of the A20, and that, as he said, puts him at risk of a driving ban. The problem with spotting the signs is that apparently they're only placed on the near side, not the off side. So there are drivers saying that if you're overtaking a vehicle, high-sided vehicle, you may well not see the lower limit sign. And obviously when speed limits like this are changed, it was previously 70, I believe, people do assume that it's the old speed limit. Now, the Met Police, they had a spokesman out saying their prosecution team, which deals with the speeding offences, has taken legal advice, and the location of the 50-mile-per-hour sign would not have impacted the enforcement. And they say they've calculated that if a motorist travelled through the section signed at 40 at the maximum permitted speed, then sped up to 50 after seeing the now removed 50-mile-per-hour sign, then slowed down at the next 40, the average speed through the section covered by the cameras would not have resulted in them being issued with a speeding ticket. Now, I'd certainly be interested to know the basis of that calculation, since it will at least partly depend on the rate of acceleration and deceleration between the signs, and it would also, of course, depend on the leeway that police allow before ticketing you. So, yeah, I think there's definitely questions to be asked there, including the effectiveness of the replacement signs. Construction work is due to tackle the flooding from May. Now, back in 2022, a major update to the Highway Code introduced the hierarchy of harm, where drivers of vehicles that cause the most harm bear most responsibility to take care of more vulnerable people around them. Now, I went through the changes in some depth on ELEVENSES because they were so important. They included having to give way to a bicycle that was undertaking you on the near side, even if you were about to turn left in front of it. The bicycle now has right of way, and you should stop, let the bike through, and then turn after it's gone past you. And I also explained the new rules around the priority with pedestrians when cars or bikes want to turn into a side road, and how we should be giving way to pedestrians who are waiting to cross the road, not just who are already crossing the road, as was formerly the case. Now, at the time, I suggested that conflicts were likely to occur when vehicles might already have started to turn, when a pedestrian simply marches down the pavement and straight into the road without stopping, and that the problems could arise when drivers actually stop suddenly to give way to pedestrians, and potentially causing rear-end collisions with a driver behind who's not expecting a turning vehicle to actually stop mid-maneuver. I also flagged up how vulnerable motorcyclists would be in the event of being hit from the rear. Now, apparently, the RAC recently surveyed no less than 2,500 motorists, and less than one quarter, 23% of their respondents claimed always to give priority to junctions since the rule change. No, sorry, that's not to give priority to junctions at the rule change. 1 in 5 basically admitted that they do not stop very often, and 6% said they never give way to pedestrians in these scenarios. So there has to be a question about whether these rules are actually working. You'd expect to see a reduction in pedestrian casualties if it was working, but in fact the government's own stats for 2022 show that 3 in 10 pedestrian fatalities actually happened at junctions, and pedestrian casualties were up 7% on the roads in 2022 compared with the previous year's total. Although, of course, you'll recall that 2021 was a year still affected by COVID lockdowns and reduced traffic levels, so I have to be careful suggesting that anything has got worse, but it certainly doesn't seem to have made anything safer for pedestrians, and honestly, I can't say I am surprised. Meanwhile, recently released official Home Office data shows that the number of fixed penalty notices issued for, quote, neglect of traffic signs and directions and of pedestrian rights, unquote, were up by a third in 2022. Interesting, the use by the Home Office of pedestrian rights. Fixed penalty notices for using a phone whilst driving almost doubled, but they are still a tiny proportion of the fixed penalty notices compared with those issued for speeding. Right, so who have we got online this morning? Well, we have Clive, we have Kevin, we have Sue, I saw there, all have looked in and said hello, so good to see you all. Now, elsewhere in the news, people hoping for a home delivery evening meal for Valentine's Day in Brighton and Hove were out of luck because, having previously warned restaurants not to prepare meals and thereby waste food, delivery drivers and riders went on strike in a quest for better pay and improved working conditions. The riders say that they've worsened since the coronavirus pandemic. Now, Delivery Job UK is a group made up of riders from Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber Eats and other companies. Their members refused to accept orders down in Brighton and Hove from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. Instead, they met at Madeira Drive at 5 p.m. and travelled in convoy around Brighton. As a result, some restaurants had to stop accepting orders on those various platforms. One rider actually claimed that Deliveroo offered strike-breaking riders fee, quote, boosts, unquote, of up to 1.5% on jobs for the strike evening. And he went on to say they used to pay for the journey to the restaurant, and he says now, no matter how far the restaurant is, they calculate it as if you are right next to the restaurant. For example, the minimum pay for riders is £2.90 per order or £3.15 for cars or motorcycles. Let's assume you just dropped an order and a new order comes in. Even if you're 3 miles away from the pickup point, the distance is not paid anymore. Deliveroo, of course, disagree. They say that they provide flexible working for riders that they say they value. They offer Deliveroo manufacturers say attractive earning opportunities and protections, and they say also that rider retention rates are high, and the overwhelming majority of riders tell us they are satisfied working with them. Personally, that sounds like a teeny amount of money. Thinking back to when I was a courier in London, which was far too long ago, I'm pretty damn sure that we were earning about a £3 minimum on a job, 30 odd years ago now. So I don't honestly think that's a particularly good earner. No wonder they ride around like complete nutcases. And Richard's just looked in. Good morning, Richard. Right, okay, so next news story. Let's see if I've got the right picture up. I have. That, believe it or not, is a police pound in Vietnam. And it's the result of a 4-year campaign targeting drink driving motorcyclists, and it's led to all those bikes being seized. Let's just zoom in on that so you can see a little bit more clearly. It is a fairly phenomenal number of motorcycles there behind the barbed wire. They stretch off into the sort of infinity almost. Quite a remarkable picture. So it seems that this campaign has backfired, because what's happened is that the owners of these bikes have realised that for many of them it's actually more cost effective to abandon the bike rather than pay the fine that would get them the bike back. So these bikes are piling up in Ho Chi Minh City. It's said that thousands have been sold at auction, presumably some of those who abandoned them in the first place, but the bike is apparently storing them in 100,000 square feet pound here, which is said to be the size of a city park. And the number of seized machines is continuing to grow, and it's not the only problem they're having. Apparently fires have broken out at these lots too. Right, okay, so don't forget, if you've any comments, anything you want to say, questions, I'm always happy to answer those if I possibly can. If you've got any views on the stories that I'm reporting, yep, drop me a line on those too. Always happy to see those. And just a quick reminder too that the show goes out Wednesdays and Sundays. Now I'm back from holiday, generally at 11 o'clock, generally live. Occasionally it goes out at slightly different times, or may even be recorded, and very, very rarely, as last week when I was on holiday, a show may go missing. And this morning I was a bit of a late starter due to somebody knocking on the door. Oops, that's the wrong button. Right, so next story then. You may remember that some time ago I actually talked about the Beeline Moto. This was, I think, back in pre-11ses days actually. It's a minimalist navigation aid. It was described as a sat nav, but the reality is it's just a sort of a dumb screen which connects via Bluetooth to your mobile phone and allows you to set the route in an app, and you need the data connection to do the route setting, and you then need Bluetooth enabled for your phone to transmit the data to the Beeline, which then shows you where to go. Now, as you can see from that, the original Beeline, all you got was an arrow pointing straight in front of you, and there's a dot off to one side, and that gives you an indicator as to which side to turn, and there is a digital countdown, 3.8 kilometers in this case, so you can see that tells you how far away the actual turn is. Now, I'll be honest, whilst I was impressed at the evident simplicity of the device. You can't get much simpler than that. And I am frankly baffled at some of the huge standalone Garmins that people insist on fitting to their bikes. A mate of mine's got one. The problem is, of course, he can't see his speed or rev counter behind them. I always thought the Beeline was, it had simplicity on its side, but I also was baffled at the price. Amazon still has the original item on sale, they're now on clearance, and they reduced to £150 from £200, and frankly my fully functional trekking Garmin with a colour map didn't cost much more than that, and having forked out up to £200 for these Beelines, you still had to find some more cash for a mount. Frankly, that is mind-blowing. Anyway, here's the replacement. There is now a Beeline 2, and you should instantly see the difference. The case itself is slightly bigger, it's slightly heavier, but it's the revised display that really counts. It covers a bigger screen area, almost double the amount of actual screen inside the unit compared with the old one. If I just go back and show you the old one, there's the sort of visible screen area just with the arrow, and you can see now the screen goes pretty much out to the edge of the device. But it's not any higher resolution. There are some reports saying it's higher resolution. It's not. It's just more pixels matching the same the basic display area. There are some improvements though. It's got a hydrophobic coated anti-glare TFT colour screen rather than the non-hydrophobic transflective screen, which means water droplets will basically sit on it. And I know from previous use of similar devices, transflective screens can be difficult to see when the sun's at the wrong angle. You also get audible and LED upcoming turn indicators, which could be useful. The device now gets a bigger capacity battery, 600 milliamp hours, said to be good for 14 hours of use. We'll need that for the active screen rather than the passive one. Hopefully your phone battery will outlast that. Charging is now via a USB-C cable, which is also a better idea than the proprietary pin previously used. And the 4 side buttons that actually needed sort of you to stop and unglove your hand to use them, you now get 2 rocker type function switches on the top, which are said to be glove friendly. But the biggest change is that mini map view, which now shows you a simple diagram representing your path through the next junction. So it should do away with some of the confusion when there are 2 turns very close together and you're not quite sure which one you should be taking. You can opt for a simple speedo mode, or if you do trust your bike's own speedo to be reasonably accurate, you can use a compass mode, and that simply displays an arrow which points in the direction of your destination, and it's up to you to decide where and when to turn in order to get there. That's just like my old Garmin GPS 3 actually from over 20 years ago. I once rode to Bordeaux using only a pointer. That was an adventure. It included a previously undiscovered ferry crossing on the Loire. I'd completely forgotten the big river right in my path and forgotten I might need a bridge or something to cross it. As it happened, my GPS brought me out at a little ferry which carried about 2 vehicles at a time. And another adventure was a trip down a road which turned into a lane, which turned into a track, which turned into a footpath, which took me out via a farmyard. So what else do you get on the app? Well, you can change the routing from fast to shortest, I believe. You can also record the route on your phone. And Moto 2 is said to be, quote, the result of years of research and development as well as feedback from our dedicated community of riders. That's Beeline co-founder Mark Jenner and his other co-founder Tom Putnam added, we're confident that the Moto 2 will redefine the way motorcyclists navigate and engage with their surroundings, providing an unparalleled riding experience. My opinion, well, I still think it's too expensive. The plastic ones going on display on sale for a recommended retail price of £179, and if you want the full metal casing it's 199 quid. They're currently crowdfunding those to go on sale in May, and I still think that's a huge overprice. At 50 quid I'd probably buy one, but I kind of think this is a bit of a last hurrah for Beeline, last throw of the dice, because more and more bikes are arriving with TFT screens that already feature connectivity to navigation apps. So, realistically, those bikes, some of those bikes are little 125s and the 350 Royal Enfields and things. So the market is shrinking rapidly, I think. Okay. Moving on to racing. I mentioned some months ago the new FIM Women's Circuit Racing World Championships, which, as I mentioned, is a real mouthful. But the latest news is they've signed up a big name, the 2018 World Supersport 300 champion and the MotoGP points scorer, Anna Carrasco. That's Anna there, seen at the 2018 Brno round. She's 26 now. She's confirmed as being on the grid for the coming season with the Evan Brothers Pro racing team. Now, Carrasco's both the first female to win an FIM road racing solo world championship race. That was back in 2017, and then she topped the championship the following year, another first after a final lap showdown at the last race of the year. I remember watching that live, actually. It was a cracking race. She was a race winner again in 2019, 2020, 2021. She has scored points in MotoGP, and that makes her one of the most successful female riders ever. Now, speaking about the opportunity, Carrasco said, "I'm really happy to announce this new adventure. I will compete in the FIM Women's," yeah, you got it, together with the Evan Brothers World Superbike Yamaha team, one of the strongest teams in the World Superbike paddock, and the goal can only be to win races. Well, certainly wish her the best of luck there. Now, moving on to motorcycles, there's not been an awful lot to show you over the last few weeks, but here's another e-motorcycle which is due to appear in no long time. This is the MotoWatt W1X. Now, MotoWatt is a French company. Let's zoom in and give you a better look at it. There it is. They were founded in 2020, and the bike comes, frankly, with the kind of clunky looks and some of the questionable design features have begun to associate with e-bike startups. Now, for starters, it gets hub center steering, and the single shock is mounted off to the opposite side of the bike from here. There's nothing particularly new about hub center steering. It's been around for many years, although it doesn't find favour with motorcycle designers generally, but it does seem to make for a quickly removable wheel, as long as you can prop the bike up, because there's no centre stand that I can see. And the other disadvantage is that the setup is almost certain to be heavier than a conventional telescopic fork setup. Now I'll have a look at the overhead view, and if you zoom in here, you can see one of my concerns. You can see the swing arm at the front, the fork, sticks right out to one side with the shock mounted out there, which presumably makes it pretty vulnerable to a crash if the bike is likely to be operated in an urban environment. I would suspect that's a potential problem. Similarly, at the rear end, the bike is supported by a single-sided swinger. This is the opposite side, so you can see the single-sided swinger on the other side of the wheel there. That gives you a better view of the front one as well from the side on. Now, the other thing that you'll notice is that the bike has twin hub motors, one at the front, one at the rear, and so it's two-wheel drive. Now, testers have raved about two-wheel drive, but I've never actually known anybody who's bought one, so whether there's any real world evidence for their advantages, I'd say the jury is definitely out. But the disadvantage there, two motors means more weight. The wheels do appear identical front and rear, which would in theory reduce production costs. You only need one casting for the wheel, and since some tyres are capable of being reversed for front and rear use, I guess you could also swap them over and perhaps even up the front and rear wear patterns. You do get LED lights, TFT display, big mirrors, practical luggage rack at the rear. There is also storage in the tank area, and you get a decent sized seat. But that styling, I don't know, pass me the bread knife. Now, considering what I've said about weight, the MotoWatt claim a ready-to-ride mass of 178 kilograms. That's a tad under 400 pounds. That's not particularly heavy, but considering it's an A1 equivalent license compliant machine for this is sort of 125 competitor, it's pretty weighty, particularly as the battery only offers 130 kilometers of range on the World Motorcycle Test Cycle. That's 80 miles, so you probably get that in an urban environment. If you're riding it up a faster road, probably rather less. Now, so that's enough for modest commuting and city riding, but for out of town use, the bike will come up short, particularly as the 20 to 80 charging time is said to be over 5 hours. So it's really not a fast charger. You're certainly not going to get a range boost off this particular bike whilst you're sitting there grabbing a coffee at these services. Now, this bike is due to go on sale in January 2025, so you've got plenty of time to make up your mind, but you can place a pre-order from March. It's billed as a unique electric motorcycle with a focus on safe and efficient urban mobility and the ultimate commuter. But really, does the design suit the end? Because I've saved the really bad news till last. The price at the moment is set at a whopping €15,000. That's £13,000 at today's rates. If you want a commuter, something simpler and far cheaper is likely to appeal to a lot more buyers. Right, what do you think about that then? Clive said, new Beeline ordered when it went live. Use the old one for many years and love its simplicity. Yeah, as I say, there are a lot of fans. I don't disagree that it's simple. I just think it's hugely overpriced. Sue says, sounds like you took the same route as us through France with an early sat-nav. Yes. Sue, also, that's an interesting point. I didn't know that. And Carrasco was the first in 300s to be penalised for being too light. I really didn't know that, actually. Thank you, Sue, for passing that piece of information on. And Kevin says his mind is already made up on that bike. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I know your opinion of old. Right, okay, so over to the final in-depth piece then, and this one is an interesting one. Now, it goes back to an article that was in Autocar actually last July. They ran a headline and a story about the car that had been developed by a Chinese manufacturer in partnership with Toyota. Everything seems to be in partnership with Toyota. They must have a huge R&D department which is trying all sorts of weird and wacky things. Anyway, the point being that the company, which is called GC Motor, if I remember correctly, they had produced a passenger car with a 4-cylinder engine, and it was fueled by ammonia. And the article basically asked, could this be a hydrogen alternative? Now, the article says that GAC Motor, they claim their 2-litre 4-cylinder engine produces 161 horsepower, but it emits 90% less carbon when compared with unleaded petrol. I'm interested to know where the carbon comes from, actually, because obviously there is no carbon in ammonia. The formula for that is NH3, so it's nitrogen and hydrogen alone. I'm not sure if it has to have some petrol sort of seeded into the ammonia to burn. I didn't read the article in that much depth. Anyway, the point being that the article recently resurfaced on another site, and again it was this claim that if we can't make enough hydrogen to power ICEs, maybe ammonia is the answer. And it went on to say that ammonia had been used in rocket engines, including in the X-15 rocket-powered aircraft that I think it reached speed and altitude record back in the day. But really, does this mean we're going to see more ammonia-powered vehicles, particularly internal combustion engines, on the road? Well, the answer is probably not, because there are two huge problems. The first one is that ammonia is corrosive, and it does attack metals. If it's completely dry, it only attacks some metals. If it's wet with some moisture, then it will attack aluminium, which obviously is a major component in most engines, and that's going to be a problem. Now, it's also highly toxic. I mean, I don't just mean mildly toxic, it kills you. In small concentrations, it irritates and can burn the skin. And I do remember having to go off to the school medical centre because I'd managed to get an ammonia burn back in the chemistry lab years ago. I'd managed to get some on the sleeve of my lab coat, and then when I sat down to write up my report, I hadn't realised that the damp patch on my sleeve was ammonia, and of course that was pressing on my skin, and I got a burn from that, so I had to go and be treated for that. It also attacks the eyes, nose, throat and lungs. In bigger concentrations it can cause blindness and lung damage, and ultimately death. In November 2016, one man died after a gas ammonia leak at the Carlsberg factory in Northampton, England. The fact Carlsberg's made in a factory says all you need to know about that. 20 people were hospitalised. 40 odd years ago, a truck with 7,500 gallons of anhydrous ammonia, that's dry ammonia basically, lost control. The crash resulted in a ruptured tank and 6 people died and 178 were injured. It's also a serious environmental pollutant. It's said to be the leading cause of fish kills in rivers. So really, as an alternative fuel, aside from the distribution and storage issues, it's hard to see how you could possibly allow anybody to use this in a petrol station. In any case, it's probably more valuable as a fertilizer. So that's the end of today's show. Don't forget the live talk event on Monday. I did promise to give you the link to that. I'm just trying to find it as I waffle away to the end of the show. Here it is, book here. This is the one. So let me just pop that up on screen for you. As I say, we'll be talking about the self-assessment chart, which you can download for free, and you can use it yourself to check where you feel that you might need to improve your riding. But I'll be talking about how to use it in this talk. £6 is the cost of a ticket. Don't forget, all your contributions go into updating my Science of Being Seen presentation, keeping that live and kicking, and also I'm trying to reboot the No Surprise website at the moment as well. We've got a comment here from Reese. Hello, good to see you, Reese. Long time no see. With the development of hydrogen engines, how long will it be until they're available in motorbikes and are they usable? Go back a couple of weeks and I have actually addressed that. The biggest problem that you have with a hydrogen engine, there is a hydrogen engine H2 that Kawasaki showed off back in October and November, and the real problem is that compressing the gas down to liquid form, you need huge, big, chunky tanks. Basically, this H2 had 2 sort of storage tanks that looked a bit like sort of round panniers on the back of the bike to actually contain the gas to drive it. So yeah, I have covered that. Check out the Substack newsletters. Scroll back through those. You will find the stories on hydrogen. So I honestly don't think hydrogen is a starter, and there are also all sorts of problems with actually making it. You need a lot of energy to produce hydrogen, and if you're creating a lot of energy, you might as well use it as the electricity that you're using to split the water or whatever to create the hydrogen. So yeah, I think it will possibly be a niche fuel, but I don't think it's ever going to power internal combustion engines in any quantity. Exactly the same as the synthetic fuels, either from bio or from the chemical combination of hydrogen and carbon into a hydrocarbon fuel. I don't think that's likely to happen on any quantity either. So that is the end of today's show. As I say, if you are out there today, do be careful. Watch out for those road surfaces. They are likely to be bad even if the sun comes out. And don't forget the show, the talks event tomorrow. Do sign up for that if you possibly can with the link, and hopefully see some of you there for that. That is it for today. So thank you again for looking in. I'm Kevin Williams. This has been Elevenses, and I will be back with the next show on Wednesday. In the meantime, stay shiny side up.